Hello everyone, I'm Colin Canet. Today I've got lots of tips and tricks and really neat ideas sent in from subscribers, so let's get started on it. This tip was sent in by Monica and she sent me a picture. It looks like it was drawn by Howard Moody. And if this looks like a sewing spool with a little piece of purple heart glued on one side and some leather on the other, and a little handle improvised in it, that's exactly what it is. And for people that are working with miniature small things, and that might be things like model boats, boat building, model planes, this is the perfect little hammer for that. When you need something small, this isn't the perfect example, but you'll get the idea anyway, where you're working with little tiny things like this and you need something to bang it in and you don't want a big hammer. This is a great little way of doing that. Well, this will be an easy one to guess. This tip was sent in by Michael just outside of Vancouver. And you know what? It's a neat little idea and I liked it enough that I sort of put this together a little different than what he has. He has his in a plastic box. But you know what? You could use it even temporary in a cardboard box, which is what I've done. So, you can see all of the grits. You've got laid out all of the grits here. And I like the way he had them. There's 80 and 100 on one side, and then further on you get 120, and they're opposed on each side, so when you're looking through them, you can see all of them and you can store all of your grits in there. This one box is a little bit long, but you get the idea anyway. This is just a neat little way. Even if it's temporary, you could build a wooden box with all of this stuff in it, and a great way of quickly finding the grit and the sanding disc that you need. That was a good idea, Michael. Thank you. This tip was also sent in from Michael just outside of Vancouver, and I'm going to start off by showing you these little things. And if you're not familiar with them, these are in fact door catches, and this is just a piece of metal, but you can see how it's got a recess in it, and of course that's for a screw. And this part here that I'm holding, you can see that it's much thicker. This is the part that has a magnet in it, and it's a very strong magnet. And these come in different sizes. You can get, this is a fairly small one, you can get them bigger. Now, I don't really have a place to put this, so I just temporarily put this on the edge of my door so I can show you how strong this is. Here's one of my big steel squares, and that's a pretty big, heavy one. And look, it just grabs onto that. It holds that firmly. It's a strong magnet, and this isn't a huge big magnet on here either. But look, you could put saw blades on it. There's all sorts of things you could do with this. So you could mount this on, say, a wooden wall or the side of a cabinet. There's all sorts of neat things you can do with these. So just another idea. Thanks, Michael. I really like that one. This tip is sent in by Dale, and Dale's suggesting that he's making some picture frames and that he wants to put some splines in there. Typically I use my table saw to do that, and then I can use some contrasting woods. But Dale is suggesting there's no reason that you can't use a biscuit joiner, and he has done that. And I don't have a biscuit joiner, but I do have a spline cutter that I've set up on my router table. So let me show you exactly the same thing, but this time on a router table. So with a biscuit joiner, you would probably want to set up some kind of a jig so that you get this in the right angle, and that would be pretty easy to do. Now on my router, I just have a 45-degree angle here, and I set the point of it so that it's right in the center of where that biscuit is going to cut. And normally I would use a clamp on here, but because my table is so deep here, I have this little clamping device on here. And there's what a biscuit, of course, looks like. And there's that little slot that I cut in there. And of course the biscuit just fits in there. You put a little bit of glue in there, slide that in, let that sit. And when it's all nice and dry, just cut that off with your hand saw, a little bit of sanding and trimming. And now you've got a nice secure joint on there. So that's a good idea. Thanks, Dale. This tip is from Dale, and Dale says if you're using Gorilla Glue and it's gone a little bit hard on you, or maybe it's gone hard on you because when you open it up, it doesn't last forever. It gets hard on you because it starts to cure with the oxygen. But he says if you immerse it in warm water, it will rejuvenate it. And I don't have any Gorilla Glue around to try, but probably somebody out there does. And I'd really like to know, if you tried that and you know if it works and you have some idea how long it's been open for, or if it was rock hard, or if it was just a little bit lumpy. I'd really like to know that. So thanks, Dale. I really appreciate that tip. I'm sure there's people out there that will get good use for that. For years, I've been telling you that a 7.25 inch blade will work fine in your 10-inch table saw, and that's because the arbor size is the same, your circular saw and your table saw. Now, nothing has changed. You still can do that. The only problem is with some saws, my saw will actually work, but I understand some saws may have a thicker riving knife or splitter. So today, between a collaboration between John in Texas and myself, I'm going to show you how John and I came up with an idea, or I should say John came up with it, using an old saw blade and taking your splitter and using it as a template. So we're going to do that today. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is mark my splitter, the height of it, because the top of the splitter here, you can see it doesn't need to be this high for using this blade. So I'm just going to mark it with my grease pencil right about there, and that's about right for the height for that. So I'm going to take this out and we're going to use it as a template. Now, I took a moment and made one line with a pencil around there, and I did that so I could position the hole in there a little bit better, because I want to avoid the expansion slots and the anti-vibration slots in here as much as I can. But now I've got a felt pen, and I'm going to be able to make a permanent mark on that, and then I'll grind that out with my angle grinder. Now, there's a reason that I'm using this Freud blade, and that's because they use German steel. It's a harder steel than most other circular saw blades. So it's going to have a little bit of flex, but it's also going to come back more. So that's why I'm using this blade. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. Okay, there's my new splitter, and that didn't take that long to cut that out, and I'm really happy with the way it's turned out. I even took a moment and made sure that this was beveled nicely so that the wood isn't going to catch in here. And if any of you have been following my channel for a while, you'll have known that this block here that you're just kind of seeing the top of here, I actually took my saw partially apart to align this to make sure that it was always in line. And when we put that in here, that should align perfectly with the back end of my blade, so that no matter what splitter I put in there, whether it's this one, which is the regular one, it will always align with the back of the blade. That way I never have to worry about readjusting that. So my splitter and my riving knife both go in there. So when I put this in here now and tighten this down and put a straight edge on that, that should align perfectly with the blade. So let's have a look and see how that, if that does in fact do that. Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, well, that's now the proof is in the pudding. Let's run some wood through and see how that works. Well, that was perfect. I am super happy with the way that worked. That's such an excellent way. And I don't know if you noticed, there's a tiny bit of deflection there when I was pushing the wood through. But you know what? It's very thin material. It's hardened steel, but there's still a tiny bit of deflection. But that's okay. You know, even in a big, thick riving knife, you might get a little bit of deflection if it's not set up perfectly correct, or if the wood is moving on it, and that's okay because the whole point of a riving knife is to stop the wood from pinching beyond the blade and then wanting to kick out. That's the only reason that a riving knife was invented, was to stop that pinching at the back of the blade. And we used, for this test, we used the least forgiving wood. We're using this heavy-duty MDF, and it has no give on it. So unlike some natural woods that have a little bit of play in them, this has no give and play. So that worked excellent. Very, very happy with that. Well, that concludes my video for today. Lots of really neat tips and tricks. And if you've got an idea or a tip or trick in the workshop, if I haven't already used it, and if I can implement it in an upcoming video, I'll certainly do that. And that way we all learn, because that's what it's all about, learning from one another. I'm Colin Canet for WoodWorkWeb. Thanks for watching.